What's the first thought that crosses your mind when you wake up in the morning? Is it, I'm tired, today's going to be tough? Or maybe, I wish I could just stay in bed? If any of these sound familiar, congratulations, your brain is sabotaging you every single morning, and you don't even realize it. This video is going to prove something to you. The reason you're not reaching your potential isn't because you lack talent. It's not because you don't work hard enough. It's because of the small, invisible habits happening inside your mind, the thought patterns you repeat every day, the sentences you tell yourself every morning. And right now, even as you're listening to this, you're still doing it. I'm going to show you how these mental habits form, why they're so powerful, and most importantly, how to break them. This isn't just theory. This is a complete roadmap to rewiring your brain and reclaiming your potential. Let me introduce you to Michael. He's 34 years old, college graduate, bachelor's degree in marketing, works at a mid-sized tech company in downtown Seattle. From the outside, everything looks fine: nice apartment, stable job, regular paycheck. But inside there's a voice, a sentence that repeats every single day, like a broken record that won't stop playing. I'm not good enough. This voice starts the moment his alarm goes off at 7 a.m. Today you're going to fail again. It continues while he's brushing his teeth, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. You look terrible. Everyone's going to notice how tired you are. It whispers during his commute to work as he sits in traffic on Interstate 5. You should have left earlier. You're always late. You can't even manage your time properly. The voice gets louder during team meetings. When his manager asks for ideas, Michael actually has one, a good one, something he's been thinking about for weeks. He opens his mouth to speak, and then the voice cuts in, sharp and certain. That's a stupid idea. Everyone's going to think you're an idiot. You're going to embarrass yourself in front of the entire team. He closes his mouth, stays silent. Again, at lunch, he eats alone at his desk. The voice says, "Nobody wants to eat with you anyway. You're boring. You don't have anything interesting to say." Meanwhile, he watches his co-workers laugh together in the break room. He assumes they're having a great time, living their best lives, while he's stuck here, alone, eating a sad sandwich and scrolling through his phone. Afternoon rolls around. He's supposed to finish a project by end of day. He's been working on it all week. But every time he reviews his work, the voice finds something wrong. This section is weak. That data doesn't support your conclusion. Your writing is terrible. You're going to turn this in, and everyone's going to see how incompetent you are. So he keeps revising, and by 5 p.m., he still hasn't submitted it because it's not perfect enough. He wanted to go to the gym after work. He's been saying he'll start for 3 months now. January 1st, he made a resolution: get in shape, be healthier. But when 5:30 rolls around and he's finally leaving the office, the voice says, "You're too tired. You had a long day. Just go home, rest. You'll start tomorrow." Tomorrow never comes. Night falls. He lies in bed, scrolling through Instagram. A former college roommate just bought a house. A girl he used to date just got engaged. A guy he graduated with just got promoted to director. And with each post, the voice gets louder. You're so far behind. Everyone else has their life figured out. What have you accomplished? Nothing. You're 34 and you're still in the same entry-level position you started in 3 years ago. He finally puts his phone down, stares at the ceiling, and the final thought of the day, the one that echoes as he drifts off to sleep. Today was a waste. You didn't accomplish anything meaningful. You're never going to change. You're going to be stuck like this forever. This isn't just one bad day. This is Michael's life. Every day, for the past 5 years, the same patterns, the same thoughts, the same limitations. And if you're not careful, if you don't understand what's happening in your own mind right now, this will be your life too. So what exactly is this voice? Where does it come from? And why is it so persistent, so loud, so convincing that it feels like absolute truth? Here's the reality that most people never understand. That critical voice in your head isn't actually you. It's not your true self. It's not your soul or your essence or whatever you want to call the real you. It's old programming, lines of code written into your mental software years ago, maybe even decades ago, by people who had their own fears, their own limitations, their own unresolved issues. Think about it. When you were a kid, maybe 5 or 6 years old, you were naturally confident. You'd sing at the top of your lungs in the grocery store. You'd draw pictures and proudly show them to everyone. You'd try new things without fear of failure because you didn't even have a concept of failure yet. You just existed in the moment, fully present, fully yourself. And then something happened. Maybe a teacher made a comment about your drawing not being realistic enough. Maybe a parent, stressed and overwhelmed, snapped at you for being too loud. Maybe a group of kids laughed at you for wearing the wrong shoes or liking the wrong cartoon. Each of these moments, they might seem small and insignificant, but they weren't. They were data points. Your young brain, desperate to avoid pain and rejection, absorbed these moments, stored them, created rules based on them. The rule might have been, don't stand out, don't be too loud, don't share your ideas, because people will judge you, and this rule got reinforced over and over throughout your childhood, your teenage years, your early adulthood, until it became an automatic program running in the background of your mind, a voice that sounds like you, but isn't you, a voice that claims to be protecting you, but is actually limiting you. This voice uses a very specific trick to maintain its power. It presents opinions as facts. It doesn't say, I'm having the thought that this might be difficult. It says, this is impossible. You're going to fail. It doesn't say, I'm feeling uncertain about this social situation. It says, everyone here thinks you're awkward and boring. It takes subjective interpretations and packages them as objective reality, and because it's coming from inside your own head, you believe it. But here's something that will blow your mind. That voice is wrong most of the time, not all the time. Sometimes it's right. If you're about to touch a hot stove, that voice that says, don't do that, you'll get burned. That's legitimate. That's your survival instinct doing its job. But when it's telling you that you're not smart enough to learn something new, when it's telling you that you'll definitely fail if you try, when it's telling you that everyone's judging you, that's not survival instinct. That's just old programming, fear-based predictions that have nothing to do with reality. Let me give you a concrete example from Michael's life. Last Tuesday, his manager sent him a calendar invite Just a simple meeting request. Subject line. Quick check-in. Time 3 p.m. No additional details. That's it. And Michael's brain immediately went into panic mode. The voice started spinning scenarios. This is it. You're getting fired. She's been unhappy with your work. She's probably talked to HR already. They're going to let you go. And you're not going to be able to find another job. And you're going to lose your apartment and end up broke and alone. Michael spent the next 4 hours in a state of complete anxiety. Couldn't focus on his work. His heart was racing. His palms were sweating. He mentally rehearsed the conversation. Imagined packing up his desk. Even started looking at job listings online, just to prepare for the inevitable 3 p.m. arrived. He walked into the conference room. His manager smiled at him, and she said, "Hey, thanks for meeting. I wanted to talk to you about a new project. We're launching a product next quarter, and I'd like you to lead the marketing campaign. I think you'd be great for it." That's it. That was the meeting. Not a firing, not even criticism. An opportunity, a vote of confidence. But Michael had put himself through 4 hours of torture based on nothing but his brain's catastrophic predictions. And here's the kicker. When I asked him how often these worst-case scenarios actually happen, he couldn't think of a single time. Not once in his entire career had he been fired. Not once had a check-in meeting resulted in disaster. But his brain kept producing the same fear-based predictions anyway, because that's what it's been trained to do. This is the power of the voice. It doesn't need evidence. It doesn't need logic. It just needs fear. And once fear takes hold, the voice can spin any story and make you believe it. Now you might be thinking, okay, but why does my brain do this? If these thoughts aren't helpful, why does my brain keep generating them? The answer comes down to evolution. Your brain's primary job, the one thing it cares about more than anything else, is keeping you alive, not happy, not successful, not fulfilled, just alive. And to do that job effectively, your brain evolved to be hypervigilant about threats. Think back to our ancestors, 10,000 years ago, living in small tribes, hunting and gathering, constantly exposed to danger. If you missed a positive opportunity, like finding extra berries or making a new friend, that was okay, you'd survive. But if you missed a threat, like a predator hiding in the grass, or a poisonous plant, you'd die. Game over, no second chance. So the humans who survived and passed on their genes were the ones who were constantly worried, constantly scanning for danger, constantly assuming the worst. This is called negativity bias, and it's hardwired into your brain. Your brain is literally designed to focus on threats, problems, and worst-case scenarios, because in the ancient world, that kept you alive. But here's the problem. We're not living in the ancient world anymore. The threats we face today are completely different. You're not worried about being eaten by a lion. You're worried about sending an awkward email. You're not worried about starving to death. You're worried about what people think of your Instagram post. The stakes are completely different, but your brain is still running the same ancient software, sounding the same ancient alarms, and this creates a massive mismatch. Your brain treats a job interview like a life or death situation. It treats a difficult conversation like a physical threat. It floods your system with stress hormones, cortisol, and adrenaline, preparing you to fight or flee. But there's nothing to fight and nowhere to flee. You're just sitting at your desk, or lying in bed, or standing in line at the grocery store, experiencing all this biological panic over situations that aren't actually dangerous. Let's go deeper into Michael's daily experience to see how this plays out in real time. Every morning his alarm goes off at 7 a.m. He's set it to a gentle chime, something that's supposed to wake him peacefully. But the moment that sound hits his ears, before he's even fully conscious, his brain starts, "Oh God, another day. I'm so tired. I don't want to do this. Why is life so hard?" He rolls over, checks his phone. Mistake number 1. He scrolls through emails. 3 new messages from his manager. His brain immediately interprets this as bad news. She's messaging you outside of work hours. That means something's wrong. You're in trouble. He hasn't even read the emails yet. They could be completely neutral updates, but his brain has already decided they're threatening. He drags himself out of bed, shuffles to the bathroom, looks in the mirror. The voice starts its morning commentary. "You look exhausted. You're getting old. Is that more grey hair? You really need to start taking better care of yourself, but you won't. You never follow through on anything. Shower." The voice doesn't stop, even here, in the one place that should be relaxing. "You're wasting water. You should hurry up. You're going to be late. You're always late. Why can't you manage your time better? Everyone else can wake up on time. What's wrong with you?" Breakfast. He makes coffee, toast, scrolls through Instagram while eating. Mistake number 2. His feed is filled with highlight reels. A friend from high school just got back from Thailand. Another friend just celebrated 5 years with her company. Someone he vaguely knew in college just launched a startup and got funding. And with each post, each perfect photo, each achievement announcement, the voice gets louder. Look at them. They're actually doing something with their lives. And you're just sitting here eating toast, going to the same job you've had for 3 years, accomplishing nothing. He gets stressed, stands in front of his closet. Even this simple task becomes an opportunity for the voice to criticize. "That shirt makes you look overweight. Those pants are too casual. You're terrible at dressing yourself. No wonder you're not taken seriously at work." Commute. He gets in his car, merges onto the highway. Traffic. Of course there's traffic. The voice seizes this opportunity. "You should have left earlier. You knew there would be traffic. You're going to be late. Your manager's going to notice. She's already questioning your performance. This is just going to make it worse. You're probably going to get a bad review this quarter. Maybe you'll get put on a performance improvement plan. That's basically the first step to getting fired." He's not even at work yet, and he's already exhausted. The voice has been running non-stop for an hour and a half, producing anxiety, shame, comparison, fear, inadequacy, and the worst part, Michael doesn't even consciously notice most of these thoughts anymore. They're so constant, so familiar, that they've become background noise, like living next to train tracks. At first, the noise is unbearable, but after years, you don't even hear it anymore. It's just part of your reality. Except, it's not just noise. It's programming. And that programming is shaping his emotions, his decisions, his entire life experience. He arrives at work, parks, sits in his car for a minute, building up the courage to walk in. This is his life. This is what he does every morning. Sits in his car in the parking garage, taking deep breaths, trying to convince himself that he can handle another day. Most people probably assume he's checking his phone or finishing up a call. They don't know he's having a full internal battle just to walk through the door. He finally gets out, walks to the elevator, rides up to the 4th floor. The doors open. He steps into the office, passes the reception desk. The receptionist says good morning. He mumbles something back, wonders if he sounded awkward. Probably did. She probably thinks he's weird. Why can't he just be normal? He gets to his desk, logs into his computer, opens his email. There they are, the 3 messages from his manager. He takes a breath, opens the first one. It's a project update, completely neutral, just information. He opens the second one, a meeting reminder. Opens the third, a question about a deadline. That's it. Nothing bad. Nothing threatening. But he's already been stressed about these emails for 12 hours. This is what the voice does. It creates problems that don't exist. It turns neutral situations into threats. It interprets ambiguity as danger, and over time, this constant state of vigilance, this endless production of fear-based thoughts, it exhausts you, it drains your energy, it prevents you from taking risks, speaking up, trying new things, being yourself. And the truly insidious part, the voice convinces you that it's helping. It says, I'm just being realistic. I'm protecting you from disappointment. I'm keeping you safe. But it's not keeping you safe. It's keeping you small. Michael has been kept small for years. He's capable of so much more than his current position. He's smart, creative, hard-working when he's not paralyzed by self-doubt. But the voice has convinced him that he's reached his ceiling, that this is as good as it gets, that dreaming bigger is just setting himself up for failure. And so he stays in the same position, the same patterns, the same limitations, not because he lacks potential, but because the voice in his head has been running the same program for so long that he's forgotten it's just a program. He thinks it's reality, but it's not reality, it's interpretation, and interpretation can be changed. Chapter 2. The 5 Mental Habits. 8. Now that you understand where this voice comes from and how it operates, let's identify the specific mental habits that are doing the most damage. I'm going to walk you through 5 patterns, and I'm willing to bet that you recognize yourself in at least 3 of them, maybe all 5. These aren't character flaws. They're not signs that something's wrong with you. They're just habits, mental habits. And like any habit, they can be changed. But first, you have to see them clearly. Mental habit number 1, catastrophic thinking. This is when your brain automatically jumps to the worst possible outcome in any situation, not the most likely outcome, not a balanced range of possibilities, just straight to catastrophe. Your boss wants to meet with you. You're definitely getting fired. Your partner seems quiet. The relationship is over. You have a headache. It's probably a brain tumor. You make one small mistake, your entire career is ruined. This isn't just pessimism. Pessimism is a general negative outlook. Catastrophic thinking is specific. It's the automatic assumption that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong, and it will be devastating. Michael is a master of catastrophic thinking. Last month, he was working on a presentation for a client meeting. Important client, big potential contract. He spent 2 weeks preparing, research, design, practice. He knew the material inside and out. The morning of the presentation, he woke up with a slight sore throat. Not sick, just a little scratchy. Probably from talking a lot the day before, but his brain immediately catastrophized. Oh no, I'm getting sick. My voice is going to give out during the presentation. I'm going to sound terrible. The client's going to think we're unprofessional. We're going to lose the contract, and it's going to be my fault. Everyone's going to blame me. He spent the entire morning in panic mode, gargling salt water, drinking tea, sucking on throat lozenges, Googling how to recover your voice in 3 hours. His anxiety was through the roof, which ironically made his throat even tighter. The presentation happened. His voice was completely fine. A little raspy for the first 2 minutes, but then it warmed up. The presentation went great. The client loved it. They signed the contract the next week, but Michael had put himself through hours of unnecessary torture, all because his brain took a minor scratchy throat and turned it into a career-ending catastrophe. And here's the really damaging part about catastrophic thinking. It doesn't just create unnecessary stress, it actually prevents you from taking action. Because if you believe that the worst case scenario is inevitable, why even try? If you're convinced that starting a business will definitely lead to bankruptcy and humiliation, you won't start the business. If you're convinced that asking someone out will definitely lead to rejection and embarrassment, you won't ask them out. If you're convinced that applying for a better job will definitely lead to failure, you won't apply. Catastrophic thinking masquerades as preparation. Your brain tells you, I'm just thinking through all the possibilities. I'm being smart. I'm being realistic. But you're not being realistic. You're being trapped by fear. Reality includes a range of outcomes: good, bad, and neutral. But catastrophic thinking only sees one outcome, the worst one, and it presents that outcome as certain. The truth: most of the things you worry about never happen. There's actually research on this. Studies show that 85% of the things people worry about never occur, and of the 15% that do occur, 79% of people report that they handled it better than they expected, or that the experience taught them something valuable. So essentially, 97% of your worry is wasted energy. But try telling that to your brain in the moment. When you're in the grip of catastrophic thinking, it feels absolutely certain. It feels like you're seeing the future clearly. But you're not. You're just seeing your fear. Mental habit number 2. All or nothing thinking. This is the mental habit where everything is black or white, success or failure, perfect or worthless, amazing or terrible. No middle ground, no grey area, no room for nuance. You eat healthy for 6 days, then have pizza on Sunday, and suddenly you've completely failed. You've ruined everything. Might as well give up on eating healthy entirely. You want to start exercising, but you don't have time for a full hour at the gym, so you do nothing, 0 minutes, because if you can't do it perfectly, what's the point? You give a presentation and stumble over one word, and now the entire presentation was a disaster. Doesn't matter that the other 29 minutes went smoothly, that one stumble negated everything. This mental habit is particularly destructive because it makes progress impossible, real change, meaningful growth. It happens incrementally, small improvements, compounded over time. But all or nothing thinking rejects incremental progress. It demands perfection, and since perfection is impossible, you end up stuck in inaction. Michael has been trapped in all or nothing thinking for years. He wants to learn coding, thinks it would be valuable for his career, bought a Python course online, made a study plan. 1 hour every evening after work, Monday through Friday, 5 hours a week. In 6 months, he'd have over 100 hours of practice. That's significant progress. Day 1, Monday. He studied for an hour, felt good, felt productive. Day 2, Tuesday. He studied for an hour, again. 2 days in a row. He's building momentum. Day 3, Wednesday. He had to work late, didn't get home until 8 p.m. Exhausted, hungry. He looked at the course, thought about studying, but he'd only have 30 minutes, not a full hour, and 30 minutes doesn't fit the plan. The plan is 1 hour or nothing, so he watched Netflix instead. Day 4, Thursday. He could have gotten back on track, but he'd already missed Wednesday. The streak was broken, and if the streak is broken, what's the point? He's already failed. Might as well just give up. 6 months later, that course is still sitting in his browser bookmark, unopened. If he'd just done 30 minutes on Wednesday, and then continued even imperfectly after that, he'd have dozens of hours of practice by now. But all or nothing thinking demanded perfection, and when perfection became impossible, he quit entirely. This pattern shows up everywhere in his life. He wants to wake up earlier, sets his alarm for 6 a.m. Day 1, he wakes up at 6. Day 2, he hits snooze and wakes up at 6:30, and then he gives up entirely, because if he can't wake up at exactly 6 a.m. every day, then the whole thing is pointless. He wants to meditate. Hears that 10 minutes a day can reduce stress and improve focus. Downloads an app. Day 1, 10 minutes. Day 2, 10 minutes. Day 3, he only has 5 minutes before he needs to leave for work. Should he do 5 minutes? No. The goal is 10. 5 doesn't count, so he does 0. Do you see the pattern? All or nothing thinking creates a false choice. Either you do it perfectly, or you don't do it at all. But that's not how life works. That's not how progress works. Progress is messy. It's inconsistent. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's doing what you can with what you have, even when it's not ideal. But all or nothing thinking doesn't allow for that. It sets impossible standards, and then uses your inevitable failure to meet those standards as proof that you should give up. Mental habit number 3, comparison syndrome. This is the mental habit of constantly measuring yourself against other people, not just occasionally, constantly, obsessively, and always finding yourself lacking. You see a colleague get promoted and immediately feel like a failure. You see a friend's vacation photos and feel inadequate because you haven't traveled as much. You see someone's perfect morning routine on social media and feel like your life is a disaster because you hit snooze 3 times and ate breakfast in your car. Here's what your brain conveniently forgets during these comparisons. You're comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. You're comparing your rough draft to their published book. You're comparing your chapter 3 to their chapter 20. Michael spends at least 30 minutes every morning scrolling through social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and every scroll makes him feel worse about himself. He sees a former classmate who just made partner at a law firm. Michael thinks, he's so successful, I'm nowhere near that level. What he doesn't see is that his classmate works 80 hours a week, barely sees his kids, and is on his second divorce. He sees an influencer with perfect abs posting about their morning workout routine, wake up at 5 a.m., meditate, journal, green smoothie, gym for 2 hours. Michael thinks, I can't even get to the gym once a week. I'm so undisciplined. What he doesn't see is that this person's entire job is fitness. They have no commute, no boss, no traditional work schedule. Their life is structured entirely around this routine. Comparing himself to them is like comparing your casual weekend basketball game to an NBA player and feeling bad that you're not as good. He sees a friend who just bought a house. Beautiful house. Huge yard. Michael thinks, I'm 34 and I'm still renting a 1-bedroom apartment. I should have my life together by now. What he doesn't see is the debt, the cosigners, the fact that this friend moved back in with parents for 2 years to save money. He just sees the outcome and assumes it came easily. This is the trap of comparison. You never have the full picture. You never see the sacrifice, the struggle, the hidden costs, the parts they don't post about. You just see the polished exterior, and you compare it to your messy interior, and obviously you come up short. The research on this is alarming. Multiple studies have shown a direct correlation between social media use and depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. The more time people spend scrolling through other people's lives, the worse they feel about their own. And it's not just social media. It's the colleague who seems to have everything together. The friend who seems to effortlessly balance career and family. The stranger at the coffee shop who looks confident and put together while you feel like a mess. But here's the truth. Everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Everyone has insecurities they're hiding. Everyone has areas where they're struggling. You just don't see it because people don't broadcast their failures and fears. They broadcast their successes and their carefully curated image. Comparison syndrome is particularly insidious because it's socially reinforced. We live in a culture that constantly ranks people best dressed, most successful, richest, most beautiful, smartest. We're taught from childhood to measure ourselves against others, class rankings, test scores, college admissions, job titles, salary bracket. But here's what they don't teach you. Your worth isn't comparative. You're not more valuable than someone else or less valuable than someone else. You're just you on your own path, with your own timeline, with your own definition of success. But comparison syndrome hijacks that truth. It makes you believe that there's one standard of success, and everyone else is meeting it except you. Michael compares himself to everyone, his co-workers, his friends, strangers on the internet, his younger brother who just started a business, his older sister who has 3 kids and a 6-figure salary. No matter where he looks, he finds someone who seems to be doing better, and every comparison reinforces his core belief: I'm not good enough. But the devastating thing about comparison syndrome is that it's a rigged game. You will always find someone who's ahead of you in some dimension. Always. There will always be someone richer, more successful, more attractive, more talented, more accomplished. Always. So if your self-worth is based on comparison, you will never feel good enough, ever. Because the goalposts keep moving. Every time you reach a milestone, you look around and find someone who's reached a bigger milestone. This is why comparison syndrome is one of the most destructive mental habits. It guarantees perpetual dissatisfaction. It guarantees that no matter what you achieve, you'll focus on what you haven't achieved. It guarantees that you'll spend your entire life feeling inadequate unless you break the habit, unless you learn to measure yourself against your own values, your own goals, your own progress, unless you learn to run your own race instead of constantly looking sideways to see where everyone else is. Mental habit number 4, mind reading. This is the mental habit where you assume you know exactly what other people are thinking about you. And spoiler alert, you always assume they're thinking something negative. Always. Your friend doesn't text you back for 3 hours. They're definitely mad at you. Your manager seems distracted during your presentation. They think you're incompetent, and they're planning to fire you. Your coworker walks past your desk without saying hello. They hate you and they've been talking about you behind your back. Here's the brutal truth. You have absolutely no idea what's happening inside someone else's head. None. Zero. You can't read minds. Nobody can. But your brain fills in the blanks anyway, and it always fills them in with the worst possible interpretation. Michael is a chronic mind reader. It's one of his most exhausting habits. Last week, he was in the office kitchen making coffee. His co-worker Lisa walked in. Michael said, "Hey Lisa, how was your weekend?" She looked at him for a second, didn't say anything, and walked out. And for the rest of the day, Michael's brain went into overdrive. She ignored me. She deliberately didn't respond. She must be upset with me. Did I say something offensive last week? Did I forget her birthday? Did she hear that I made a mistake on the Johnson project? Is everyone talking about it? Does the whole office think I'm incompetent? Is that why she didn't want to talk to me? He played this scenario over and over in his mind, analyzed every interaction he'd had with Lisa in the past month, tried to figure out what he'd done wrong, considered sending her an apology email, even though he didn't know what he was apologizing for. The next day, Lisa came to his desk. "Hey Michael, sorry about yesterday. I had my AirPods in and didn't hear you until I was already down the hall. How was your weekend?" That's it. That was the reason. She didn't hear him. Nothing to do with Michael at all. But he'd spent 24 hours creating an entire narrative of rejection, judgment, and social failure based on absolutely nothing. This is what mind reading does. It takes ambiguous situations and fills them with negative meaning. It takes neutral behaviors and interprets them as rejection. It creates problems that don't exist and then reacts to those imaginary problems as if they're real. The damage this causes is enormous, because when you're constantly assuming that people are thinking negative things about you, you start to change your behavior. You become guarded, withdrawn. You avoid interactions because you assume they'll be negative. You don't speak up in meetings because you assume people will judge your ideas. You don't reach out to friends because you assume they don't want to hear from you. And ironically, this behavior can actually create the outcomes you're afraid of. If you're always withdrawn and guarded, people might think you're unfriendly or uninterested. If you never share your ideas, people might think you don't have any. If you never reach out to friends, they might stop reaching out to you. Mind reading creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. You assume people don't like you, so you act in ways that make connection difficult, which makes people less likely to connect with you, which confirms your assumption that people don't like you. And the most frustrating part, when people actually do show you positive signs, your mind reading dismisses them. Your manager compliments your work. They're just being polite. They don't really mean it. A friend invites you to hang out. They probably felt obligated. They didn't actually want you there. Someone laughs at your joke. They're probably laughing at you, not with you. Mind reading is particularly destructive in romantic relationships, friendships, family dynamics. You assume your partner is annoyed with you when they're actually just tired. You assume your friend is pulling away when they're actually just busy. You assume your parent is disappointed in you when they're actually proud, but don't know how to express it. Michael does this with his girlfriend, Sarah. They've been dating for 8 months, and he's constantly reading negative meanings into neutral behaviors. She takes a while to respond to a text. She's losing interest. She seems quiet during dinner. She's unhappy with the relationship. She mentions an ex-boyfriend in passing. She's comparing them and Michael doesn't measure up. Last month, Sarah suggested they spend a weekend apart. She wanted to visit her sister. Michael immediately interpreted this as a sign that she was pulling away, that she didn't want to spend time with him, that the relationship was falling apart. He spent the entire weekend anxious, checking his phone constantly, overanalyzing every text message. When Sarah came back, she was excited to see him. She'd missed him. The weekend with her sister was nice, but she was happy to be home. There was no hidden meaning, no secret message. She just wanted to visit her sister. But Michael had put himself through 3 days of unnecessary anxiety based entirely on his mind reading. He created a problem that didn't exist. And if he keeps doing this, if he keeps reading negative meanings into Sarah's actions, eventually he'll push her away, not because she wants to leave, but because his constant anxiety and need for reassurance will exhaust her. The antidote to mind reading is simple but difficult. Check your assumptions. Ask questions. Communicate. Instead of assuming you know what someone's thinking, actually find out. Instead of creating narratives in your head, get real information. But this requires vulnerability. It requires admitting that you don't have all the answers. It requires risking that your fears might be true, and for most people, it's easier to just assume and suffer silently than to ask and potentially face rejection. Mental habit number 5, the permanence trap. This is the mental habit of believing that your current situation is permanent, that how things are now is how they'll always be, that nothing will ever change. You're struggling financially? You'll always be broke. You're single? You'll always be alone. You're in a job you hate. You'll never find anything better. You're unhappy? This is just how life is, and it's never going to improve. This mental habit is particularly insidious because it destroys hope, and without hope, without the belief that things can get better, you stop trying. You stop looking for opportunities. You stop working toward change. Because what's the point if nothing's going to change anyway? Michael has been trapped in the permanence mindset for the past 3 years. He's been in the same position at his company since he started. Associate marketing specialist, entry level. And he wants to move up. He wants more responsibility, more impact, more salary, but he's convinced it's never going to happen. His manager doesn't like him. That's a story he tells himself. She never gives him feedback. She never asks his opinion in meetings. She assigns the big projects to other people so clearly she doesn't see potential in him. And if she doesn't see potential, he'll never get promoted. He'll be stuck in this position forever. Except here's the thing. His manager doesn't dislike him. She barely thinks about him at all. Not because he's insignificant, but because he's never given her a reason to notice him. He does his work quietly, never asks for feedback, never volunteers for challenging projects, never shares his ideas. From her perspective, he's fine, competent, but not someone who seems hungry for growth. If Michael approached her and said, "I'm interested in taking on more responsibility. What skills do I need to develop? What projects could I contribute to?" The entire dynamic would change. She'd see him as proactive, ambitious, someone worth investing in. But he won't do that, because the permanence trap has convinced him that the outcome is already decided. His manager doesn't like him. He's never getting promoted. So why even try? This same pattern plays out in every area of his life. He's been wanting to get in better shape for years, but he's convinced his body is just like this. He has bad genetics. He's naturally out of shape. Exercise won't make a difference, so he doesn't exercise. He's been single for 2 years, but he's convinced he's going to be alone forever. Dating is too hard. He's too awkward. Women aren't interested in him, so he doesn't put himself out there, doesn't try dating apps, doesn't say yes. When friends offer to set him up, he's been wanting to learn guitar for a decade, but he's convinced he's too old to start. You have to learn instruments when you're a kid. Adults can't learn new skills like that, so the guitar sits in his closet, unplayed. The permanence trap is built on a cognitive distortion called fortune telling. Your brain predicts the future, assumes the prediction is accurate, and then treats that prediction as fact. But your brain is terrible at predicting the future, absolutely terrible. Research in psychology has repeatedly shown that people are awful at predicting how they'll feel in the future and how long their emotional states will last.
We overestimate how long negative emotions will persist. We underestimate our ability to adapt and overcome challenges. We assume that our current circumstances define our future when history shows that circumstances change constantly.
Michael thinks he'll always be in his current position, but 3 years ago, he didn't have this position. He was unemployed, fresh out of college, applying to hundreds of jobs. Then he got this one. His circumstances changed. 5 years ago, he thought he'd never graduate college. He was failing 2 classes his junior year, convinced he'd drop out. But he got tutoring, retook the classes, graduated. His circumstances changed. 10 years ago, he thought he'd never have friends. He was lonely in high school, socially awkward, convinced he'd be alone forever. But he went to college, joined clubs, made friends. His circumstances changed over and over throughout his entire life. His circumstances have changed, but the permanence trap makes him forget all that. It makes him believe that this time is different. This time, things really are permanent. But they're not. Nothing is permanent. Situations change. People change. You change. So you change. The job you hate today might lead to an opportunity you love tomorrow. The skills you don't have today can be learned. The relationship that hasn't happened yet might be just around the corner. But the permanence trap prevents you from seeing possibilities. It keeps you locked in the prison of your current circumstances, not because the prison is actually locked, but because you've convinced yourself the door will never open. These 5 mental habits: catastrophic thinking, all or nothing thinking, comparison syndrome, mind reading, and the permanence trap. They work together to create a comprehensive system of self-sabotage, a system that keeps you small, scared, stuck, and convinced that your limitations are permanent facts about reality rather than changeable patterns of thinking. And the truly devastating thing, you've been living with these patterns for so long that they feel normal. They feel like truth. They feel like just the way things are. But they're not. They're just habits, mental habits, and habits can be changed. Now, before we talk about how to break these mental habits, you need to understand what's actually happening in your brain. Because once you understand the mechanics, once you see the physical reality of these patterns, everything changes. You realize that this isn't about willpower or positive thinking. It's about neurobiology, and neurobiology can be changed. Your brain is made up of roughly 86 billion neurons. These neurons communicate with each other through connections called synapses. When you have a thought, what's actually happening is that electrical signals are traveling across specific pathways of connected neurons. And here's the crucial part. The more often a particular pathway gets used, the stronger it becomes. Think of it like walking through a forest. The first time you walk from point A to point B, there's no path. You're pushing through brush, climbing over fallen trees, finding your way slowly. But if you walk that same route every day, eventually a path emerges. The grass gets worn down, the route becomes clear, and pretty soon it's so easy to walk that path that you don't even think about it. You just automatically follow it. Your brain works the same way. The first time you have a thought, like "I'm not good enough," it's creating a weak connection between certain neurons. But if you think that thought again and again, day after day, year after year, that weak connection becomes a strong pathway. Eventually, it becomes a neural superhighway. And once a thought pattern becomes a superhighway, your brain defaults to it automatically. It doesn't even consider other routes. It just takes the highway, because it's the path of least resistance. This is why Michael can't stop thinking, "I'm not good enough." He's been thinking it for so long, reinforcing that neural pathway so many times that it's become his brain's default route. Every morning when he wakes up, his brain automatically travels down that highway. He doesn't consciously choose the thought. It just appears, automatic, habitual. And here's where it gets even more interesting. These neural pathways aren't just creating thoughts, they're also triggering emotional and physiological responses, because thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations are all interconnected in your nervous system. When Michael thinks I'm not good enough, his brain doesn't just stop at the thought. It also activates the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing fear and threat. The amygdala sends a signal to the hypothalamus, which activates the sympathetic nervous system, which triggers the release of stress hormones. Cortisol and adrenaline flood his system. His heart rate increases. His breathing becomes shallow. His muscles tense. His digestive system slows down. Blood flow redirects from his prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of his brain, to his limbic system, the survival part. This is the fight or flight response. His body is preparing him to either fight a threat or run from it, but there's no actual threat. He's just lying in bed, or sitting at his desk, or driving to work, but his body doesn't know that. All it knows is that the amygdala sounded the alarm, and when the amygdala sounds the alarm, the body responds. This physiological response reinforces the neural pathway, because now the thought, "I'm not good enough," isn't just a thought, it's a full body experience. Anxiety, tension, fear, and the brain learns to associate that thought with those feelings, which makes the thought feel even more true, even more powerful. Over time, this creates what neuroscientists call a conditioned response. The thought automatically triggers the emotional and physical reaction, and the emotional and physical reaction reinforces the thought. It's a loop, a cycle, and it runs automatically without conscious effort. Now, here's the bad news and the good news. The bad news is that these neural pathways are incredibly strong after years of reinforcement. You can't just wish them away. You can't just decide to stop thinking negative thoughts and expect the pathways to disappear. But the good news, the really incredible news, is that your brain has something called neuroplasticity. This means your brain can change. It can create new pathways. It can strengthen some connections and weaken others. It can literally rewire itself. This isn't just theory. This is proven science. Brain imaging studies have shown that meditation practices can physically change the structure of the brain, increasing gray matter in areas associated with emotional regulation. Cognitive behavioral therapy has been shown to create measurable changes in neural activity. Learning new skills creates new neural connections. Your brain is not fixed. It's not permanent. It's constantly changing based on what you do, what you think, and what you practice. And this means that the mental habits that feel so strong and unchangeable right now, they can be weakened, and new, healthier patterns can be strengthened. But this process requires two things: time and consistency. You didn't build these mental superhighways overnight. They formed over years, maybe decades of repetition, and you're not going to replace them overnight either. But you can start building new pathways, and every time you use a new pathway, it gets a little stronger, and every time you consciously choose not to use an old pathway, it gets a little weaker. Let me give you a metaphor. Imagine your old mental habit is a well-worn dirt road, and your new mental habit is a tiny trail in the grass. If you want to establish the new trail as your primary route, you need to walk it repeatedly. At first, it's hard. The old road is so much easier. Your feet naturally want to follow it because it's familiar. But if you consistently choose the new trail, day after day, week after week, it starts to become a real path. And if you stop using the old road, grass and weeds start to grow over it. It doesn't disappear completely. It's still there, but it's not maintained anymore. It's not the obvious choice anymore. Eventually, if you keep using the new path and avoiding the old road, the new path becomes your default, and the old road becomes overgrown and hard to follow. This is what happens in your brain. The old neural pathway doesn't disappear, but it weakens. It's no longer your automatic default, and the new pathway, with enough repetition, becomes your new default. Now, let's talk about the specific neurochemistry involved, because understanding this will help you recognize what's happening in your body and give you more control over it. When you're stuck in a negative thought pattern, when you're catastrophizing or comparing yourself to others, or assuming the worst, your brain is releasing cortisol. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone. In small doses, it's helpful. It gives you energy and focus to deal with real threats. But chronic cortisol that's constantly elevated because you're constantly stressed, is damaging. Chronic cortisol suppresses your immune system. It interferes with learning and memory. It increases blood pressure. It contributes to weight gain, especially around the midsection. It disrupts sleep. It increases anxiety and depression. Essentially, it breaks down your body and your mental health over time. And here's the vicious cycle. Cortisol narrows your focus. It makes you hypervigilant for threats, which makes you more likely to interpret neutral situations as threatening, which triggers more cortisol, which makes you even more vigilant. It's a downward spiral. Michael has been living in a state of chronic cortisol elevation for years. His constant negative thoughts are constantly triggering his stress response. His body thinks it's under threat all the time, and this has real consequences. He's tired all the time. Even when he sleeps 8 hours, he wakes up exhausted. He gets sick frequently. His digestion is a mess. He has tension headaches multiple times a week. These aren't separate problems. They're all connected to his chronically elevated stress hormones. On the flip side, when you successfully interrupt a negative thought pattern, when you reframe a situation or choose a healthier perspective, your brain releases different chemicals: dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins. These are feel-good neurotransmitters. They create sensations of pleasure, satisfaction, and well-being. Dopamine is particularly important because it's involved in reward and motivation. When your brain releases dopamine, it's essentially saying, "That was good. Do that again." This is how new habits form. When you practice a new mental pattern and it results in a dopamine release, your brain is more likely to repeat that pattern in the future. This is why small wins matter so much. Every time you successfully catch a negative thought and reframe it, you get a small dopamine hit, and that dopamine reinforces the new neural pathway. It makes you more likely to catch and reframe the next time. Serotonin is involved in mood regulation and feelings of contentment. Higher serotonin levels are associated with lower anxiety and depression. And here's something fascinating. About 90% of your serotonin is actually produced in your gut, not your brain. This is why the gut-brain connection is so important. Chronic stress disrupts your gut health, which disrupts serotonin production. which impacts your mood and mental health. Endorphins are natural painkillers. They're what create the runner's high that people experience during intense exercise. But they're also released during laughter, connection, and moments of joy. When you experience positive emotions, you're literally releasing chemicals that make you feel good and reduce pain. Understanding this neurochemistry is empowering because it means you're not crazy, you're not weak, you're not fundamentally broken. You're just experiencing the predictable results of neural pathways and chemical processes that have been running for years. And more importantly, it means you have leverage points. You can intervene in these processes. You can interrupt the cortisol cycle. You can trigger dopamine and serotonin through your choices and actions. You can literally change your brain chemistry through your mental habits. Now, let's talk about the timeline. How long does it actually take to change a mental habit? The popular answer is 21 days. You've probably heard that it takes 21 days to form a new habit, but that number is actually based on a misinterpretation of research from the 1960s. The actual research shows a much wider range. A more recent study from University College London found that it takes an average of 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic, but the range was huge. Some habits formed in 18 days, others took 254 days. The complexity of the habit, the individual's personality, and the level of consistency all played a role. For mental habits, which are more complex than behavioral habits, the timeline is probably on the longer end. Expect at least 90 days of consistent practice before a new mental pattern starts to feel natural, and 6 months to a year before it becomes truly automatic. This might sound discouraging, but think about it this way. You're going to be alive for the next 6 months, regardless. You can spend those 6 months the same way you've spent the last 6 months, trapped in the same mental patterns, experiencing the same limitations, or you can spend those 6 months building new patterns, and 6 months from now, you'll be in a completely different place. Michael started this work 8 months ago. The first month was hard. He was catching maybe 20% of his negative thoughts, and when he did catch them, reframing felt forced and fake. His brain didn't believe the new thoughts. It kept pulling him back to the old patterns. Month 2 was slightly better, maybe 30%. He was getting faster at recognizing the patterns, the labels we talked about earlier, catastrophic thinking, all or nothing thinking. Those labels helped him see the patterns more clearly. Month 3, he hit a plateau, felt like he wasn't making progress. The old thoughts were still showing up, just as strong. He was tempted to give up, but he kept going, and around week 14, something shifted. The new thoughts started to feel less forced. They started to feel more believable. Month 4, 50%. He was catching about half of his negative thoughts and successfully reframing about half of those. The other times, the old pattern was still too strong, but progress was happening. Month 6, 70%. And the really exciting thing was that some of the new patterns were starting to run automatically. He'd have a challenging situation, and instead of immediately catastrophizing, his brain would automatically think, what's a more balanced perspective? Not every time, but sometimes. And those spontaneous moments of healthier thinking They were proof that the new neural pathways were getting stronger. Month 8, where he is now, the transformation is undeniable. The old patterns still show up, probably always will to some degree. But they don't control him anymore. He can observe them, recognize them, and choose a different response. Most of the time, and his life has changed. Not because external circumstances magically improved, but because his internal state changed. And when your internal state changes, your external choices change. And when your choices change, your results change. He's speaking up more in meetings. He's volunteering for projects. He's set up a meeting with his manager to talk about his career development. He's going to the gym 3 times a week, not perfectly, not always, but consistently. He's dating again. He joined a rec league soccer team. He's learning guitar through online lessons. None of these things happened because someone gave him permission or because circumstances became perfect. They happened because the voice in his head, that constant stream of you can't, you shouldn't, you'll fail, it's quieter now, and when it speaks, he doesn't automatically believe it. This is what's possible when you understand the neuroscience and commit to the process. You can literally rewire your brain. You can weaken the pathways that have been limiting you and strengthen new pathways that serve you. But it requires understanding what you're working with, and it requires patience with the process. Alright, so now you understand the neuroscience. You know that your mental habits are neural pathways that have been reinforced over years. You know that these pathways can be changed through neuroplasticity. But how do you actually do it? Where do you start? The answer might surprise you. You don't start by trying to change your thoughts. You start by simply noticing them. This is the foundation of everything, awareness. Because you cannot change what you cannot see, and most people go through their entire lives never really seeing their thoughts, never observing the constant stream of mental commentary that's shaping their experience. Your thoughts are like the background music in a store. At first, you notice it, but after a few minutes, you tune it out. It fades into the background. You're not consciously hearing it anymore, but it's still affecting your mood, your energy, your behavior. Your thoughts work the same way. They're always there, always running, always influencing you. But you've tuned them out. You've stopped noticing them. The awareness practice brings them back into your conscious attention. And once you can see them clearly, once you can observe the patterns, everything changes. Because suddenly you realize these are just thoughts. They're not facts, they're not truth. They're just mental events, sentences your brain is producing, and you have the ability to question them, challenge them, and ultimately choose whether to believe them or not. Let me tell you exactly what happened when Michael started the awareness practice. We had him do a very simple exercise for 7 days. Every time he noticed a self-critical thought, he wrote it down. That's it. No judgment, no trying to fix it, no trying to think more positively, just observation and documentation. Day 1, Monday. He woke up, went through his morning routine, drove to work, and by lunchtime, he'd written down 8 thoughts. I'm going to be late. That one showed up at 7:15 a.m. when he was getting dressed. I look terrible today. 7:30, looking in the mirror. That was a stupid thing to say. 9:20, after a comment in the morning team meeting, She definitely thinks I'm an idiot. 9:25. After his coworker didn't respond to his joke, I should have prepared better for this presentation. 10:40. Reviewing his slides. I'm so lazy. 11:30. When he took a break to get coffee. Everyone else is working harder than me. Noon. Looking around the office. I'm never going to get promoted. 12:15. Seeing a colleague get assigned a high-profile project. 8 thoughts in half a day. And Michael was shocked. He told me I had no idea I was doing this. These thoughts just feel like my normal internal commentary. I didn't realize how negative they were. Day 2, Tuesday. He was more attuned now, more vigilant. By the end of the day, he documented 15 thoughts. The volume hadn't actually increased. He was just catching more of them, noticing patterns he'd previously missed. Day 3, Wednesday, 22 thoughts. Now he was really seeing it. The constant stream, the relentless criticism, the automatic negativity. You're going to mess this up. Why did you say that? That was awkward. You're falling behind. Everyone else seems to have it together, except you. You're wasting time. You should be further along in your career by now. You're not smart enough for this. They're probably talking about you. You look fat in that shirt. You're boring. Nobody wants to hear your opinion. You're a disappointment. On and on, thought after thought. A constant assault of criticism and doubt and comparison and fear. By day 7, Sunday, Michael had documented 107 negative thoughts in 1 week. That's more than 15 per day. 15 times a day, his brain was producing thoughts that made him feel inadequate, anxious, ashamed, or hopeless. When we sat down and reviewed all of them together, Michael was visibly shaken. He spread the pages out on the table. All those thoughts, all that negativity, all directed at himself. He said, if a friend talked to me this way, I'd cut them out of my life immediately. I wouldn't tolerate this from anyone. But I've been doing this to myself for years, and I didn't even realize it. This is the power of the awareness practice. It makes the invisible visible. It brings the background noise into sharp focus. And once you see it clearly, you can't unsee it. You become aware of the constant mental programming that's been running your life. Now, when you do this exercise yourself, and I strongly encourage you to do it, you're probably going to have a similar reaction. You might be shocked by the volume, shocked by the harshness, shocked by how relentlessly negative your inner voice is. And here's what I want you to understand. This doesn't mean something's wrong with you. This doesn't mean you're more negative than other people. Everyone has this voice. Everyone has this constant stream of self-critical thoughts. The only difference is that most people never stop to notice it. They just live with it, accept it as normal, and suffer under its weight without ever questioning it. But you're different. You're taking the time to see it, and seeing it is the first step toward changing it. Now, once you've done the 7-day awareness practice, once you have this catalogue of your thought patterns, the next step is to start categorizing them. Remember those 5 mental habits we talked about: catastrophic thinking, all or nothing thinking, comparison syndrome, mind reading, and the permanence trap. Most of your negative thoughts will fall into one of these categories. Go through your list, label each thought. This one's catastrophic thinking. This one's comparison. This one's mind reading. This one's all or nothing. When you categorize them, you start to see patterns. You start to see which habits are strongest for you. Michael discovered that his top 2 habits were catastrophic thinking and comparison syndrome. About 60% of his negative thoughts fell into those 2 categories. Knowing this was incredibly valuable, because now he knew where to focus his effort. Instead of trying to change every negative thought, he could zero in on his 2 dominant patterns. The next layer of the awareness practice is learning to catch thoughts in real time, not just at the end of the day when you're reviewing, but in the moment as they're happening. This is harder because these thoughts move fast. They show up automatically, and by the time you consciously register them, they've already triggered an emotional response. But with practice, you get faster. You start to catch them earlier in the process. Michael started using what I call the pause technique. Whenever he noticed a strong negative emotion, anxiety, shame, anger, frustration, he'd pause, stop whatever he was doing, take a breath, and ask himself, what thought just went through my mind? At first, he couldn't identify the thought. The emotion was there, but he couldn't trace it back to its source. But with practice, he got better. He'd feel anxiety spike and be able to think, I just had the thought that I'm going to fail this presentation. He'd feel shame and recognize, I just compared myself to my coworker and decided I'm not as good. This real-time awareness is crucial, because this is where you have the power to intervene. Once you catch a thought in the moment, before it spirals into a full emotional reaction, you can question it, challenge it, reframe it. But you can't reframe what you can't see. This is why awareness always comes first. You have to become a skilled observer of your own mind. You have to develop what psychologists call metacognitive awareness, the ability to think about your thinking, to observe your thoughts without being consumed by them. Here's a technique that helps build this skill. It's called the narrator technique. When you notice a thought, imagine it's being narrated by someone else, not your own voice, someone external. Michael started doing this with cartoon characters. When he'd catch a catastrophic thought like, you're going to get fired, he'd imagine it being said by Donald Duck or SpongeBob or Elmo, and immediately the thought lost some of its power, because it's hard to take a thought seriously when it's being delivered by a cartoon character. It creates just enough distance, just enough absurdity, that you can see the thought for what it is. Just a sentence, just words, not truth, not reality, just mental noise. Another powerful technique is thought labeling. Instead of engaging with a thought, instead of arguing with it, or trying to convince yourself it's not true, you simply label the pattern. There's catastrophic thinking. That's comparison syndrome. Hello, mind reading. You're not fighting the thought. You're not suppressing it. You're just naming it, acknowledging it. And in that acknowledgement, you create space, a tiny gap between the thought and your reaction to it. And in that gap, you have choice. Michael got really good at this. He'd be driving to work, feel anxiety rising, catch the thought, today's going to be a disaster, and immediately think, that's catastrophic thinking. And that simple label would deflate the thought. It wouldn't disappear, but it wouldn't take over either. Now, here's something important to understand about the awareness practice. You're not trying to eliminate negative thoughts. That's impossible. Your brain is going to produce negative thoughts. That's part of being human. What you're learning is to not be controlled by them, to observe them without identifying with them, to see them as mental events rather than truths about reality. Think of your thoughts like clouds passing through the sky. You can't control which clouds appear. You can't stop them from forming, but you don't have to chase every cloud. You can just watch them drift by. Some clouds are dark and threatening. Some are light and fluffy, but they all pass. None of them are permanent. And you, the observer, the sky itself, you remain constant underneath. This metaphor helps people a lot because it reframes the relationship with thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You're the space in which thoughts occur, and that space is much larger, much more stable than any individual thought. Michael practiced this visualization. When a negative thought would arise, he'd picture it as a cloud, watch it form, watch it move across his mental sky, watch it eventually dissipate, and with each practice, it became easier to not grab onto the cloud, to not let it pull him into a storm. The awareness practice also includes becoming aware of your triggers, the situations, people, and contexts that reliably activate your negative thought patterns. Because once you know your triggers, you can prepare for them. Michael discovered that his triggers included Sunday evenings, something about the end of the weekend, and the approach of Monday activated his catastrophic thinking. He'd start worrying about the week ahead, imagining all the ways things could go wrong. Social media, specifically Instagram and LinkedIn. Within 5 minutes of scrolling, he'd be comparing himself to everyone and feeling inadequate. His manager's office, even when he was just walking past it, he'd have the thought, she's probably disappointed in me. Team meetings, especially the moment when his manager asked for ideas, he'd want to speak up, but the voice would shut him down. The gym, or rather, the idea of going to the gym. He'd think about going and immediately have the thought, you're too out of shape, everyone will judge you. Knowing these triggers allowed Michael to develop strategies on Sunday evenings. Instead of letting his mind spiral, he started doing a planning session, writing down his top 3 priorities for the week. This gave his brain something concrete to focus on, instead of vague catastrophic scenarios. For social media, he set a timer, 10 minutes maximum, and he unfollowed accounts that consistently triggered comparison. He didn't need to see highlight reels of people he barely knew. For his manager's office, he reframed it. Instead of assuming disappointment, he'd remind himself, she's busy, she has 100 things on her mind. This isn't about me. For team meetings, he made a commitment. Share at least one idea per meeting. Even if his brain said it was stupid, even if it felt uncomfortable, just one idea. And after a few weeks of doing this, it got easier. The voice got quieter. For the gym, he changed his approach. Instead of thinking he needed to do a full intense workout, he committed to just showing up for 20 minutes. Just walk on the treadmill for 20 minutes. That's it. Low stake. And once he was there for 20 minutes, most of the time he'd naturally extend the workout because the mental barrier was already broken. This is the practical application of awareness. You notice the patterns. You identify the triggers. and you develop specific strategies for each one. You're not trying to overhaul your entire mind at once. You're making small, targeted interventions, and those small interventions add up. Now, I want to give you one more awareness tool that's incredibly powerful. It's called the evidence log. Your brain has a negativity bias, right? It remembers your failures and forgets your successes. It notices criticism and overlooks compliments. It focuses on what went wrong and ignores what went right. The evidence log corrects this bias. At the end of each day, you write down 3 pieces of evidence that contradict your core negative belief about yourself. If your core belief is I'm not capable, you write down 3 things you did that day that demonstrate capability. Solved a problem at work, helped a friend, made dinner, learned something new, fixed something that was broken. Each one is evidence of capability. If your core belief is nobody likes me, you write down 3 positive social interactions. Someone smiled at you. A coworker asked your opinion. A friend texted you. Your barista remembered your order. Each one is evidence that you're not universally disliked. If your core belief is I'm lazy, you write down 3 productive things you did. Went to work, did laundry, paid bills, exercised, read a book. Each one is evidence that you're not lazy. The key is that these don't have to be huge achievements. Small evidence counts, because the goal isn't to prove you're amazing. The goal is to prove that your negative belief is inaccurate. And small evidence is often more powerful than big evidence, because your brain can't dismiss it as a fluke. Michael's core belief was I'm not good enough. So every night, he'd write 3 pieces of evidence that contradicted that belief. Day 1, completed the Johnson report on time. Sarah said she appreciated me listening to her talk about her day. Made it to the gym. Day 2, contributed an idea in the team meeting. Helped a new employee figure out the project management software. Cooked a healthy dinner instead of ordering takeout. Day 3. Fixed a bug in the website that had been there for weeks. My manager thanked me for it. Called my mom, practiced guitar for 15 minutes. At first, it felt forced. His brain kept trying to discount the evidence. Sure, you completed the report, but it wasn't that good. Sarah was probably just being polite. Going to the gym once doesn't mean anything. But I made him stick with it, and after 3 weeks, he had 63 pieces of evidence. 63 moments that contradicted the belief I'm not good enough, and his brain couldn't ignore that anymore. The negative belief didn't disappear, but it lost its absolute power, because now there was counter-evidence, lots of it, and every time the belief would surface, his brain would also remember the evidence log. The thought might still be I'm not good enough, but it was followed by actually, here are 63 examples that suggest otherwise. This is how you change deeply ingrained beliefs, not by forcing positive affirmations that you don't believe, but by accumulating real evidence from your actual life that demonstrates the belief is false. Your brain can argue with affirmations, but it can't argue with evidence. The awareness practice, when done consistently, creates a fundamental shift. You go from being unconsciously controlled by your thoughts to being a conscious observer of your thoughts. You go from automatically believing every sentence your brain produces to questioning and evaluating those sentences. You go from being a victim of your mental habits to being an active participant in shaping them. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes weeks of consistent practice, but it does happen, and when it does, everything changes. Alright, so you've built awareness. You're catching your negative thoughts. You're recognizing the patterns. You're seeing the triggers. Now comes the next crucial step, reframing. This is where you take those negative thoughts and examine whether there's another, more accurate, more helpful way to interpret the situation. Let me be very clear about something. Reframing is not about lying to yourself. It's not about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. Reframing is about recognizing that your initial interpretation of a situation is not the only interpretation, and often it's not even the most accurate one. Your brain's default interpretation is biased. It's biased toward negativity because of evolution. It's biased by your past experiences. It's biased by the neural pathways you've been strengthening for years. But just because it's your default doesn't mean it's correct. Think of it this way. You're watching a movie. You see two characters having a conversation. One character says something and walks away. The other character looks upset. Your brain immediately creates a story. Oh, the first character must have said something mean. That's why the second character is upset. But then the scene continues, and you learn that the first character actually delivered difficult but necessary news. The second character isn't upset at them. They're upset about the situation. Your initial interpretation was wrong, not because you're stupid, but because you only had partial information. Life works the same way. You're constantly interpreting situations with partial information, and your brain fills in the gaps. But the way it fills in those gaps is heavily influenced by your mental habits. If you have catastrophic thinking, it fills in the gaps with worst-case scenarios. If you have comparison syndrome, it fills in the gaps with reasons you're inadequate. Reframing is the practice of consciously examining those automatic interpretations and asking, is this the only way to see this situation? Is this the most accurate way? Is this the most helpful way? Let me show you exactly how this works. We'll take one of Michael's recurring thoughts and walk through the reframing process step by step. The thought, I'm falling behind everyone else. This thought shows up multiple times a week for Michael when he sees a colleague get promoted, when he scrolls through LinkedIn, when he compares his life to his friends' lives. It feels absolutely true. It feels like an objective fact about reality. But is it? Let's examine it. Step 1. Identify the evidence for the thought. What makes you think this is true? Michael's evidence. My college roommate just made VP at his company. I'm still entry level. My friend just bought a house. I'm renting. My sister has 3 kids and a stable family. I'm single. Okay, so there is some factual information here. Other people have achieved certain milestones that Michael hasn't. That's objectively true. Step 2. Identify evidence against the thought. What contradicts this interpretation? Michael's counter-evidence. I have a stable job. I'm learning new skills. I'm debt-free. I have savings. I'm healthy. I have close friendships. I've grown a lot in the past few years. So there's also factual information that suggests he's not falling behind. He's making progress, just different progress. Step 3. Question the underlying assumptions. What assumptions is this thought based on? The thought I'm falling behind everyone else assumes several things, but there's one universal timeline everyone should follow. That career progression is the primary measure of success. That where you are at age 34 is somehow the final verdict on your life. That everyone else's achievements came easily and naturally. That external milestones equal internal fulfillment. Are these assumptions true? No, obviously not. There are infinite timelines, infinite definitions of success. Life is long and circumstances change constantly. Other people's achievements likely involved struggle and sacrifice you don't see, and many people who look successful externally are miserable internally. But Michael's thought doesn't question these assumptions. It just accepts them as fact. Step 4. Consider alternative interpretations. What are other ways to view this situation? Alternative interpretation 1. Different people have different timelines. I'm on my own path. Alternative interpretation 2. I've been prioritizing different things. Career advancement hasn't been my sole focus, and that's okay. Alternative interpretation 3. I'm actually ahead in areas I'm not giving myself credit for. Financial stability, health, personal growth. Alternative interpretation 4. The people I'm comparing myself to might be ahead in visible milestones, but struggling in invisible ways. Alternative interpretation 5. Falling behind implies there's a race, but life isn't a race. There's no finish line where everyone arrives at the same time. Each of these interpretations is just as valid as the original thought. Probably more valid, but Michael's brain defaults to the negative interpretation, because that's the highway that's been built over years. Step 5. Choose a more balanced, accurate perspective. After walking through this analysis, Michael's reframed thought becomes, I'm making progress on my own timeline. I've achieved things that matter to me. Other people's timelines don't diminish my worth or my potential. Same situation, same external facts, but completely different meaning, completely different emotional impact. The original thought creates shame, anxiety, and hopelessness. The reframed thought creates acceptance, peace, and motivation. Now, the first few times you do this reframing process, it's going to feel fake. Your brain is going to resist. It's going to say, yeah, but I don't actually believe the reframed thought. The negative thought feels more true. And that makes sense, because the negative thought has been your default for years. It has a strong neural pathway. The reframed thought is new. It has a weak pathway. Of course, the negative one feels more true. But here's the thing. Feelings of truth and actual truth are not the same thing. Something can feel true without being true, and something can be true without feeling true. Yet, when you practice a reframed thought repeatedly, when you consciously choose it over the automatic negative thought, that new pathway gets stronger, and eventually the reframed thought will start to feel as true as the negative thought once did. It just takes time and repetition. Michael struggled with this at first. He'd go through the reframing process, arrive at a balanced perspective, and then immediately think, "But I don't believe this. This feels like I'm just trying to make myself feel better." And I told him, "You're right. You don't believe it yet, because you haven't practiced believing it, but keep choosing this thought anyway. Keep walking that new path, and watch what happens." He did. And after a few weeks, the reframed perspectives started to feel more natural. Not automatic yet, but natural, like they were legitimate ways of thinking, not just fake positivity. Now let me give you another powerful reframing technique. It's called the compassionate friend perspective. This one is particularly effective for harsh self-criticism. Here's how it works. When you catch yourself thinking something cruel about yourself, something like, "I'm so stupid," or "I'm a failure," or "I'm worthless," ask yourself this question: if my best friend was in this exact situation, experiencing this exact thought about themselves, what would I say to them? The answer is almost always compassionate, realistic, encouraging. You wouldn't tell your friend they're stupid or worthless. You'd probably say something like, "Hey, everyone makes mistakes. This doesn't define you. You're learning. You're doing your best." So why not give yourself that same compassion? Why not talk to yourself the way you talk to someone you care about? Michael started using this technique constantly. Every time he caught himself being harsh, he'd imagine his friend Chris was saying the same thing about himself, and then he'd respond the way he'd respond to Chris. Self-critical thought: "I can't believe I forgot that deadline. I'm so unreliable." Compassionate friend response: "You forgot one deadline because you've been juggling 15 different projects. That doesn't make you unreliable. It makes you human. What can you do to prevent this next time?" Self-critical thought: "I'm 34 and I'm not where I should be. I'm such a loser." Compassionate friend response: "Where you should be, according to who? You're making progress. You're learning. You're growing. That's what matters. Be patient with yourself." This technique is powerful because it bypasses your internal critic. Your critic has a lot of power over you, but it has no power over how you treat a friend. So by channeling that friend compassion toward yourself, you access a more balanced perspective. Another reframing technique, the future self perspective. This one helps you zoom out and see the bigger picture. When you're stuck in a negative thought loop, when something feels like a catastrophe, ask yourself, will this matter in 5 years? Will I even remember this moment? Most of the things we stress about are completely forgotten within weeks. That embarrassing thing you said in a meeting 3 months ago, nobody else remembers it. You probably barely remember it, but in the moment, it felt huge. The future self perspective helps you right-size your current situation. Is this actually a big deal in the context of your whole life, or is it just your brain catastrophizing? Michael used this technique when he didn't get a promotion he'd applied for. He was devastated. The voice in his head said, "You failed. Everyone knows you're not good enough. Your career is over." We did the future self exercise. I asked him, 5 years from now, when you've developed new skills, taken on bigger challenges, maybe moved to a different role or even a different company, will you look back at this moment and think, that was the end of my career? Or will you think, that was a redirection that led somewhere better? He thought about it and realized that, from a future perspective, this wasn't a catastrophe. It was just a data point, feedback, a signal that he needed to develop certain skills or change his approach, not a permanent verdict on his worth or potential. That shift in perspective changed everything. Instead of spiraling into shame and hopelessness, he started asking, what can I learn from this? What skills do I need to develop? How can I position myself better for the next opportunity? Same situation, different frame, different outcome. Here's another technique, the scientist mindset. This one is particularly helpful for all or nothing thinking and catastrophic predictions. When your brain makes a negative prediction, treat it like a hypothesis that needs to be tested, not as a fact, not as certainty, as a testable hypothesis. Your brain says, if I speak up in this meeting, everyone will think my idea is stupid. Scientist mindset, interesting hypothesis. Let's test it. I'll share one idea and observe what actually happens. Your brain says, if I go to the gym, everyone will judge me for being out of shape. Scientist mindset. That's a prediction. Let's collect data. I'll go once and see if anyone actually says or does anything judgmental. Your brain says, if I ask her out, she'll definitely reject me. Scientist mindset. I don't have enough data to know that. The only way to find out is to ask. This mindset creates distance between you and your predictions. You're not arguing with your brain. You're not trying to convince yourself the prediction is wrong. You're just saying, let's see what actually happens. And most of the time, what actually happens is much less catastrophic than what your brain predicted. Michael started applying the scientist mindset to his fear of speaking up in meetings. For months, his brain had been saying, your ideas aren't good enough. Everyone will judge you. And he believed it without question. Then he started treating it as a hypothesis to test. My brain predicts that if I share an idea, people will react negatively. Let's see if that's true. He shared an idea, a small one, nothing groundbreaking, and people listened. His manager asked a follow-up question. A colleague built on his idea. No one laughed. No one criticized. His prediction was wrong. The next meeting, he tested again, shared another idea. Again, neutral to positive response. His prediction was wrong again. After a dozen meetings, the data was clear. His brain's prediction that people would judge his ideas harshly was consistently inaccurate, and with that data, the prediction lost its power. It still showed up sometimes, but Michael didn't believe it anymore, because he had evidence to the contrary. Now let me give you one more reframing tool that ties all of this together. It's called the thought record. This is a structured way to capture and reframe negative thoughts. You can do this in a journal or on your phone. The format is simple. Situation: what was happening when the thought occurred? Automatic thought. What exact thought went through your mind? Emotion. What emotion did the thought trigger? How intense was it on a scale of 1 to 10? Evidence for the thought. What makes you think it might be true? Evidence against the thought. What contradicts it? Alternative interpretation. What's a more balanced way to view this? Reframed thought. Your new, more accurate perspective. New emotion. How do you feel now? Intensity on a scale of 1 to 10. Michael did thought records every day for 3 months. At first, it was tedious. It took 15 minutes to work through one thought, but he got faster, and more importantly, the practice of systematically examining his thoughts created new neural pathways. His brain started doing this analysis automatically, without the formal structure. He'd have a negative thought, and his brain would immediately start generating counter-evidence and alternative interpretations. The reframing process, which had been slow and deliberate at first, became more automatic over time. This is the power of consistent practice. You're literally training your brain to think differently, to question automatic interpretations, to generate balanced perspectives, and the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. One final note on reframing. It's not about eliminating negative thoughts or negative emotions. Sometimes situations genuinely are difficult. Sometimes you will experience loss, failure, disappointment, pain, and trying to reframe those experiences into something positive is not helpful. It's denial. Reframing is about accuracy, not positivity. It's about seeing situations clearly without the distortion of catastrophic thinking or comparison or mind reading. Sometimes, when you see clearly, you'll realize the situation isn't as bad as you thought. Other times, you'll see that yes, this is genuinely difficult, but at least you're responding to reality, not to fear-based predictions. Michael lost his grandmother last year, and the grief was real. It was painful. There was no reframing that could make that okay. What reframing did help with was his secondary thoughts about the grief. His brain wanted to say, "You're taking too long to get over this. You should be handling this better. You're weak." Those thoughts, those could be reframed. Grief doesn't have a timeline. I loved my grandmother. Of course I'm sad. This is a normal human response to loss. Being sad doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. So reframing isn't about making everything positive. It's about removing the unnecessary suffering that comes from distorted thinking. There's enough real suffering in life. You don't need to add layers of shame, catastrophizing, and self-criticism on top of it. Okay, so you've built awareness. You've learned to catch your thoughts in real time. You've practiced reframing. Now comes the long game, building new neural pathways. Remember the forest path metaphor. Your old mental habits, or highways, wide, well-paved, easy to travel. Your new mental habits, or barely visible trails in the grass. If you want to establish a new trail as your primary route, you need to walk it repeatedly, day after day, week after week. At first, it's hard. The old highway is right there, calling to you. But if you consistently choose the new trail, something remarkable happens. The trail becomes a path. The path becomes a road. Eventually it becomes a new highway. Meanwhile, the old highway, if you stop using it, grass and weeds start to grow over it. This is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain constantly reorganizes based on what you practice, connections you use, get stronger. Connections you don't use get weaker. And over time, your brain literally rewires itself. But this takes time. Expect at least 90 days of consistent practice before a new mental pattern starts to feel natural, and 6 months to a year before it becomes truly automatic. I know 90 days sounds like a long time, but think about it this way. You're going to be alive for the next 90 days, regardless. You can spend those 90 days the same way you've spent the last 90 days, trapped in the same mental patterns, or you can spend those 90 days building new patterns. 90 days from now, you'll be in a completely different place. Michael's transformation didn't happen overnight. Month 1 was hard, really hard. He was catching maybe 20% of his negative thoughts. Reframing felt forced and fake. His brain didn't believe the new thoughts. There were days when he wanted to give up. Month 2 was slightly better, maybe 30%. He was getting faster at recognizing patterns. The labels, catastrophic thinking, all or nothing thinking, made it easier to identify thoughts quickly. Month 3, he hit a plateau. This is where most people give up. Progress slows down. Thoughts still show up, just as strong. But what's actually happening is that new neural pathways are forming. They're just not strong enough yet to compete with the old highways. Around week 14, something shifted. He woke up one morning and had a challenging situation. His manager sent an email asking to meet. His old pattern would have been immediate catastrophizing, but instead, his brain automatically generated a balanced thought. It wasn't forced. It just happened. The new pathway was starting to work. Month 4, 50%. Month 6, 70%. The reframing was becoming more automatic. His brain was generating alternative interpretations without the formal process. Month 8. Where he is now, the transformation is undeniable. Old patterns still show up, but they don't control him anymore. He can observe them, recognize them, and choose a different response. And his life changed, not because circumstances magically improved, but because his internal state changed. He started speaking up in meetings. He volunteered for projects. He set up a meeting with his manager about career development. He's going to the gym 3 times a week. He's dating again. None of these things happened because someone gave him permission, or because circumstances became perfect. They happened because the voice in his head is quieter now, and when it speaks, he doesn't automatically believe it. Let me give you the specific, practical tools you can start using today. These are the techniques Michael used to create real, lasting change. Tool number 1, morning mental hygiene. 3 minutes before you check your phone, before you start your day, sit on the edge of your bed, close your eyes, take 3 deep breaths, inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4. Then ask yourself, what kind of day do I want to create? Choose one quality, one word: calm, confident, curious, patient. Whatever it is, visualize yourself moving through the day with that quality. This isn't wishful thinking, it's mental rehearsal. Athletes do this before competition. Visualization activates the same neural pathways as physical practice. You're priming your brain, giving your subconscious a template. Michael does this every morning, at 5:45 a.m. His word changes depending on what he's facing, sometimes calm, sometimes confident, sometimes open. This 3-minute habit changed his entire relationship with mornings. Tool number 2, the pattern interrupt. When you notice you're spiraling, you need a way to interrupt the pattern physically, not mentally, because your mind is already hijacked. You need to involve your body. Options: splash cold water on your face for 30 seconds, drop and do 10 push-ups, or jumping jack. Sharp inhale through nose, hold 7 seconds, exhale slowly through mouth for 8 seconds, repeat 3 times. Snap a rubber band on your wrist. Michael's pattern interrupt is push-ups. Every time he catches himself catastrophizing, 10 push-ups. He can't catastrophize while doing push-ups. By the time he finishes, the thought loop has lost momentum. Tool number 3, the evening review. 5 minutes at the end of each day. Get a journal or open a note on your phone. Answer these questions. When did I catch negative thoughts today? When did I successfully reframe? When did old patterns win? Evidence log. 3 pieces of evidence that contradict your core negative belief. Tomorrow's intention. 1 thing you want to focus on tomorrow. This takes 5 minutes, but it's incredibly powerful. What you pay attention to grows. Michael does this right before bed. Bullet points. No lengthy writing, but he's consistent almost every night for 8 months. Tool number 4, the thought partnership. Find someone you trust. Share your mental patterns with them. When you're stuck in a thought loop you can't break, call or text them, not to vent, to reality check. Michael's thought partner is his sister, Rebecca. When he texts her in a spiral, she asks targeted questions. Is that catastrophic thinking? What evidence do you have? What evidence contradicts it? Those simple questions help him see the pattern and break it. Tool number 5, the commitment device. Create external accountability. Public declaration. Tell people what you're working on. Financial commitment. Sign up for a service where you put money on the line. Daily check-in. Find someone to text every day. Visual tracking. Mark an X on a calendar every day you practice. Michael told his close friends, joined an online community, and tracked his practice on a calendar. After 30 days of X's, he didn't want to break the streak. Tool number 6, energy management. Mental habit change requires cognitive energy. If you're exhausted, you'll default to old patterns. Sleep 7 to 8 hours. Eat regularly. Don't skip meals. Move your body. Manage stress through meditation, breathing, or time in nature. Michael was sleeping 5 to 6 hours, skipping breakfast, living on coffee, never exercising. He started prioritizing sleep, eating breakfast, going to the gym 3 times a week. These physical changes made the mental work easier. Tool number 7, gratitude recalibration. 3 times a day. Pause for 30 seconds. Notice something you can appreciate in that moment. Something specific. The taste of coffee, sunlight on your skin, a kind interaction. This trains your brain to notice positive data points throughout the day. Michael does this at 9 a.m., 1 p.m., and 5 p.m., 30 seconds, 3 times a day. It's changed his baseline mood significantly. So where is Michael now 1 year after starting this work? He still has hard days, days when the old voice shows up strong. But those days are the exception, not the rule. And when they happen, he has tools. He's not helpless anymore. His default mental state has shifted. Instead of waking up with dread, he wakes up neutral, sometimes even optimistic. Instead of assuming the worst, he assumes possibility. Instead of staying silent to avoid judgment, he speaks up. The internal shift created external changes. Career. He led the website redesign project successfully. Last month, he got promoted to marketing coordinator. More responsibility, more autonomy, more salary, and he's engaged with his work in a way he wasn't before. Health. He goes to the gym 3 times a week, 7 months. Consistent, lost 15 pounds. But the physical changes aren't the most important part. The most important part is that he's proven to himself that he can commit and follow through. Relationships. He's been dating Sarah for 4 months. It's going well. When Sarah seems quiet, he doesn't assume she's pulling away. He asks what's going on. He communicates. He's learning to tolerate the discomfort of vulnerability. Skills. He can play guitar, 20 songs. He's completed 2 Python courses, built small projects. He has new skills that make him more valuable in his marketing role. Life satisfaction. Michael likes himself now. For years, he was at war with himself. Constant criticism, doubt, shame. Now, he's on his own side. The voice still shows up sometimes, but Michael doesn't believe it automatically anymore. I asked Michael recently what the biggest change has been. He said, "I used to think I was broken, that something was fundamentally wrong with me. But now I understand that I was just stuck in mental habits, and habits can be changed. I'm not broken. I was just practicing the wrong patterns." That's it. That's the core insight. You're not broken. You're just practicing mental habits that don't serve you, and you can practice different ones. Here's where you are right now. You understand the 5 mental habits that destroy potential. You understand the neuroscience. You have the tools. The only question is, will you do it? Because here's the truth. Most people won't. Most people will watch this video, feel inspired for a day or 2, and then slip back into old patterns, not because they're lazy, but because change is hard, and old patterns are comfortable, even when they're destructive. Your brain will resist. It will tell you that you don't have time, that you'll start next week, that this won't work for you, that your situation is different. Recognize those thoughts for what they are. Resistance. The old patterns fighting to stay alive, or you can start today, right now. Choose one tool from this video, just one. Maybe morning mental hygiene, maybe the evening review, maybe the awareness exercise where you document your thoughts for 7 days. Just choose one. Commit to doing it every day for 30 days. Put it in your calendar. Set a reminder. Tell someone. Create accountability. Make it harder to quit than to continue. Here's what will happen. Week 1 will be hard. You'll forget sometimes. You'll feel like it's not working. Don't quit. Keep going. Week 2, it'll get slightly easier. You'll start to notice small changes. A thought you caught that you would have missed before, a situation you handled differently. Week 3. You might hit a plateau. This is normal. Keep going. Week 4. Something will click. A spontaneous moment where your brain automatically generates a healthier thought, a challenging situation you handle with more calm. You'll have proof this is working, and then you'll decide, do I keep going? Most people, once they make it through the first 30 days, they continue because they've experienced the shift. They've tasted freedom from their old patterns. But you won't know unless you start. You won't experience the shift by just understanding the concepts. You have to practice. And I'm not going to lie, it's work. It requires effort, consistency, patience. It's not a quick fix. It's a gradual rewiring of your brain through repetition and practice. But it's the most important work you'll ever do. Because everything in your life flows from the quality of your thoughts. Your relationships, career, health, happiness, all of it is shaped by the mental habits running underneath. Change those habits and you change everything. So, here's my challenge. Don't just consume this information. Act on it. Choose one tool. Commit to 30 days. Start today. Not because I'm telling you to, but because you deserve to experience what it's like to be free from the constant mental assault. You deserve to wake up without dread, to face challenges without catastrophizing, to pursue opportunities without being paralyzed by self-doubt. You deserve to discover what you're actually capable of when your mind is working for you instead of against you. You don't have to believe this is possible for you. You just have to be willing to try. Suspend your skepticism for 30 days. Give the process a genuine chance and see what happens. Let me leave you with one final thought. Your potential isn't gone. It's not destroyed. It's just hidden, buried under years of catastrophic thinking, comparison, self-doubt, and limiting beliefs. But those mental habits can't actually change who you are. They can't reduce your intelligence, creativity, capacity for growth, or fundamental worth. All they can do is convince you that you're limited. And as long as you believe that story, you'll act like it's true. But the moment you see that the belief is just a thought, just an old pattern, just a neural pathway that can be changed, everything opens up. Think about a river, powerful, flowing, capable of carving through stone. But imagine that river has been dammed up, blocked. The water is still there, the power is still there, but it can't flow. Your mental habits are the dam. The work we've talked about, the awareness, the reframing, the new neural pathways. That's not about creating potential. It's about removing the dam, letting what was always there flow freely. Michael didn't become a different person. He became more himself. The version that was always there underneath the anxiety and self-doubt. He didn't acquire worth or capability. He just stopped blocking it. And that's what's available to you. Not a transformation into someone else, but a return to yourself. The version that's curious, instead of fearful, confident, instead of self-doubting, engaged, instead of withdrawn. That version already exists. You've probably experienced glimpses of it, moments when you felt fully present, fully capable, fully alive. Those moments aren't flukes. They're you, without the interference of destructive mental habits. This is your invitation, not to fix what's broken, but to clear away what's blocking you, not to become someone new, but to become more fully yourself. The choice is yours. Stay in the same patterns or build new ones. But understand that staying in the same patterns isn't neutral. It's allowing the old patterns to become even stronger while your potential slowly atrophies. Or you can start today with one small practice, one new choice, one step toward mental freedom. Your potential isn't destroyed, it's waiting for you. And the moment you start removing the barriers, it will emerge stronger than you imagined, because it was always there. You just couldn't see it. Now you can. Now you know what to do. The only question is, will you do it? Take that readiness you're feeling right now and turn it into action. Choose one tool. Commit to 30 days. Start your transformation today. Your future self will thank you. The version of you 90 days from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, is already grateful that you made this choice. Don't let them down. You deserve this. You've always deserved this. It's time to claim it. You're not broken. You're not limited. You're not stuck. You're just practicing the wrong patterns. And now you're going to practice better ones. Welcome to your transformation.